Hey everybody, welcome to you all. I'm just going to stop share my screen and show you all of our faces. I think you can see them already. So welcome along to our first session of this consultation. Welcome back for those who have previously been along to some of these webinars for different pieces of work that we've been doing, and welcome to all of the people who haven't. It's lovely to have you here. We've got an hour today to talk through the forthcoming consultation, or the consultation that's live now for the Greater Cambridge Local Plan. And this is a bit of an introduction to the plan. It's a little bit about how to comment, how to get involved, and some of the dates and some of the events that we're going to be doing. We've got a team here today, some of the panel, to talk to you about different things, and we're going to try and make it a little bit interactive. We've got some new technology, shall I say, that we're going to try out this time, so bear with us. As always, we like to try a few new things to make it a little bit less of us just talking at you and you guys more being involved. What I'm going to do is I am going to just run through our panel and introduce them to you first, and then we'll do a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll crack on. So I'm going to introduce them one by one. Hannah.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah Loftus. I'm Engagement and Communications Lead at the Shared Planning Service, and been working on kind of putting all of this consultation process together with the team.
Thank you, Hannah, and thanks for being here. Mark.
Hello all, I'm Mark Dees. I'm a Senior Planning Policy Officer with the Shared Planning Service.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning. Mairead.
Well, hi, I'm Mairead Sullivan. I'm also a Senior Planning Policy Officer with the Shared Service.
Thank you, Mairead. And John?
Hello, I'm John Dixon, the Planning Policy Manager.
Hey, John. Behind the scenes, I'm going to introduce we've got two of our colleagues behind the scenes running all the technology, and without them, this wouldn't be working. So we've got Will Smeaton and Tim Cliff who are running the technology. So we can either be thankful that they get it all right, or we can blame them if it all goes wrong. No, I'm joking. And so for me, I'm Paul Frainer. I'm Assistant Director for Strategy Economy, so part of the team who are helping to prepare the plan. So about the session, just to reassure, it's being recorded. There isn't any chat facility on here, but there is a Q&A, and what we'd encourage you to do is put any questions into the Q&A as we go through slides, or we go through the interactive sessions, and we'll try and answer as many as we can as we go through. But we will have some time at the end, hopefully 15-20 minutes, to do some question and answers as well. And I think that you can post anonymously, or I think you can use your name. We'll try not to mention names. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. We've got a few slides to present to you just on the stage of where we are at the moment. And I'm going to hand over to John Dixon, who's going to start walking through those slides with you now. Actually, just before we do that, I'm just going to outline the session. So just to outline what we're going to do, we're going to have a little bit about what the stage of the plan making we're at. And then I'm going to do a little session on plan making demystification for all of you, those of you who don't know what plan is about, and that's going to be interactive. And then we're going to talk a little bit about consultation, how to participate, and outline some of the next sessions, including further webinars and some of our in real life sessions as well. So John, I'm going to hand over to you, and you can start.
So, as a reminder of where we are in this process, this isn't very much not the beginning of the process. We started plan making as far back as 2019, I think we started. You might remember in early 2020, we did our first conversation, and we held many events just like this one. And we generated an awful lot of feedback, over 8,500 comments, all of which have been published on our website. You can find all the information. We've also since then published some further research on the plan. So back in November last year, we published a series of studies that we've done to inform the plan, and some of the testing we've done on the choices that will be available to the plan. And since then, we've been working up what the first proposals for the plan should be for this consultation. After we'd worked those up as as officers, clearly they then go through a democratic process. We went through, I think, at least 4 meetings with councillors who discussed, agreed, made changes, scrutinised the documents to agree them for consultation that's now started. And we're now just into the 6-week consultation we're carrying out. Just an early reminder of where we are. This is not the final plan. This is very much the proposals we would use to develop the plan before we then consult you on it next year. So what you can see at the bottom of the screen is our overall timeline, which shows we would consult next year on the draft plan. That would then lead to a plan that we would want to submit for adoption. So our final plan that we want to adopt, and then that would then be sent off to the Secretary of State, and there'll be an independent examination with an independent planning inspector to scrutinise the plan and listen to all the representations that come in at that point before a report would come to us as to whether the plan is sound and we can go on to adopt. We've got more on this later in the presentation, I think. Next slide, please. So what does it do? Hopefully you may have had a chance already to look on our website and have a look at the consultation for yourselves, but it tries to set out the vision and the aims for our plan. What do we think this area should look like over the next 20, 30 years, and how should we guide what that should look like through our proposals in the plan? It sets out the overall amount of development we should plan for in the period to 2041. So that's the number of homes, number of jobs, but also what infrastructure should go with those. It sets out where we think that development should take place, and clearly seeks your views on those proposals, but also the key policies that would drive how that development takes place. What should be like? What standards should it meet, for example? And again, it's not a full plan. You will see when you look at that consultation, it sets out what we propose to prepare, not the full detailed policy wording and site details that we would have in a final plan. The other thing to point out is that all the evidence we've used to help us prepare this plan is available on the website. There are many studies and topic papers where we've tried to provide in great detail the background to those proposals. It's not just our proposals, it's why and the evidence behind them. So you have that available should you choose to comment as well. And I'll hand back to Paul.
Thanks very much, John. And I'm just going to come off the screen share now, because we're going to move to what we're going to try is a little bit of an interactive session, just to get you thinking really about the plan and try and help you see where we're at. So I'm going to try this now, and let's hope we're going to be using something called Mentimeter. Now Mentimeter, for some of you who've used it before, is fairly simple, we think, to use. I've managed to get through it myself to put this together, so we'll have a go at it anyway. So if you can see my screen now, and you can do it a number of ways. You can either go to www.menti.com, type in the code, and it will take you to the page, or you can use this QR code that you can see now, and hopefully you can all see that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to move to the first question on Mentimeter, and which is this. So for everybody, and hopefully when you start putting your answers up, you should be able to see them come up on the screen. So in 3 words, what do you think that a local plan actually plans for? So you can see our little diagram on the side there that's part of our infographics, that, you know, we think this is what we're trying to plan for, and this is what goes into the local plan. And I appreciate that lots of you have seen some of the documents already, and there is a lot of stuff in there already, a lot of information, a lot of evidence, a lot of wording. So what are the things that we're thinking of? And don't just copy the ones on the side on the tree. So we've got some new homes. I'm not seeing a huge amount coming through. Employment, yeah, absolutely. I think employment and homes are obviously really, really key. And growth is an interesting word, because obviously growth means lots of different things. You know, population growth requires new development, new housing, and we need to plan for the future generations, to ensure that they have got houses and they've got places to work and, you know, new homes to live in. Nice places, definitely. And as you'll see from some of our documentation, you know, great places is one of the key themes of this plan. You know, biodiversity and green space is another key area. And I think one of the really big topics that we're really battling with this plan, that's maybe been slightly different from previous plans, is climate change. And we know that this is a significant issue for everybody. I mean, planning has got a huge role to play in that. It's not the only tool that we're going to use to solve some of these complex challenges, but it certainly is very much one of them, and it's really been at the heart of what we're trying to put into the plan. Some really good stuff coming here. Yeah, transport, homes, green spaces, anti-discrimination. I mean, that's a really good one. And I think one of the things for us that we've really tried to be thinking about in this plan is how that we try and, as we've got in this slide, is demystify the process of planning. So actually we can get people involved and get people to understand that it's not just kind of dry, boring stuff. John will frown at me about putting houses in places, but actually it's really about placemaking, and it's really to try and plan in uncertainty that we have in our times at the moment is really tricky. But actually we have to do that job, and we have to do as well as we can. But what we really need to do is try and get as many people involved in the process as possible. And Hannah, a little bit later, we're talking about why it's so important to get involved in the consultation and to put your thoughts in and to try and get involved. And there are things that are really important that communities can engage with in the planning making process, even though some things aren't so easy to engage with. So some other ones in their history is a really important one as well, because we build, plans are an iterative process. Each plan, we've currently got 2 adopted plans for South Cambridgeshire and Cambridge City, and we're going to try and build on those as well. And we don't want to throw out good stuff, we want to improve on that and move it forward. So it's really important that we have lots of diversity. There's some great stuff coming through here. So
it's really interesting that one of them that's come up is making developers money, and that's actually quite important, because we do need to make sure development that comes through is viable. But a key role of the plan is to make sure that it seeks contributions from development towards the infrastructure needs, the open spaces, the transport needs that are generated by those developments. And that's actually a key role of the plan, to set out what those needs are, what those costs are, and the funding that should come from development, so everybody knows up front what the expectations of developers are, to help them bring forward developments, but also communities know what will come with development, not just the housing, but that it will be supported.
I think it's really interesting to see transport really central here, because actually transport is one thing that the local plan doesn't actually plan for itself. We take account of transport plans, but it isn't the transport plan, which is something that I think as planners we do struggle with. I think, we have a system that we work within, and transport sits at the level of different authorities. So in our area, we've actually got a lot of different levels of local authorities that have transport roles. So we have the combined authority at the macro level, we have the county council sort of in between, and we also have the Greater Cambridge Partnership. And they'll be consulting on some really important transport proposals starting, I believe, on Monday now, in actual fact. So we work really closely with those transport authorities, but we aren't the transport planners ourselves. We have to try and make sure that our plan meshes with those other local transport plans as seamlessly as possible. But it's actually something we can't plan for in this plan.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. So some fantastic stuff coming through, and just to let you know, obviously the stuff that you're putting in here, we will capture that. We are capturing all of this stuff, and we're trying to get insight, because actually we're even going to try and build in some conversations that are going to feed into the next webinars and the next session, so we can actually consider a lot of this stuff. And part of the process of consultation is listening to this and hearing some voices in different ways. So I'm going to move on to the next one now. So we have got another slide for you to interact with, another one to get you thinking. So this is the next one. So this is always a question that we get asked quite a lot, and gets a lot of questions around it. So who do you think, and who does everybody think, who does one think that gets to decide if a local plan should be adopted or not? And there's a wide range of people who are involved in making and examining and viewing local plans. But I've given you a few options there. I mean, if there are other options that you think might be in there, you can always put that into the Q&A. So we've got a couple there already coming through for the planning inspector. And just to give you some context of who you think these people are. The officers who write the plan is essentially us, or the people in front of you now. So we've got some of our policy planning team, John and Mairead and Mark, and all of us who are involved in making a plan. The planning inspectorate in government are part of MHCLG, and they inspect plans, that's correct. And our elected council members, and you've got to remember that we have a little complicated system here because we work for 2 councils, so we've got lots of elected members, so both councils and both council processes, and they make the decisions on behalf of the council. So we've got one saying that developers decide the plan as well. So more coming through at the moment. So I think this is a bit of a trick question, but I think you've got it right. Broadly, most of you have voted. It is decided, essentially adopted by elected members. I mean, we will draft the plan, and we will make the plan is drafted on our evidence base and the consultation and the process in which we have been going through for the last 18 months and will continue to go through for the next 18 months. When we have a plan that we believe is as John described in the previous slides, as the final submission that we've got to, I think that will be in 2 years' time. We will then submit that to the Secretary of State and the planning inspector, who will examine that to find if it's sound. And if such that it is found sound and it's examined and found to be sound and is deliverable, then we will then take that through our council processes, and the elected members would then decide whether that plan was adopted or not. So absolutely, and you'll all be pleased to know it isn't the developers who decide the plan or adopt it. That's something certainly that doesn't happen. So moving on to the final slide before we go back into a few more sessions. This isn't interactive, but it's something we really wanted you to think about as we go through this consultation and feedback to us. And you'll have details of how to contact us, how to give us comments, how to feedback informally as well. But a really important thing is to think about when we're always trying to ask ourselves a question. We're always asking ourselves as we're trying to draft this, and actually it's really helpful to kind of tell you what we think is good for us to hear from you, is what you think makes a good local plan. And you've had some good, really interesting comments in the first slide, but when you're responding to the consultation, it'd be really helpful for us to understand what you guys think is making a good local plan, because there are some things that it's required to do from a statutory perspective, but there are also lots of things that it could do or it could talk to that are really important from your perspective. Unless we know those things, we can't try and integrate them into the plan. So yeah, if you can think about that while you're commenting, and that'd be really, really useful. So I'm going to come out of this now. Thanks for that interaction. Hopefully that did work okay. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move back over into just our view. I think this is a bit more of a dry technical view on what is kind of legally considered a statutory sound local plan. I'm going to pass to John, who's going to talk you through that. John, I'm just going to share my screen on that slide, and hopefully you should all be able to see it. And John, you can talk us through this. So
this is a rather technical, wordy slide about what a plan's got to achieve before it's considered sound. So sound is the word that's used in national government guidance as to what an adoptable plan must be. If it's a suitable, ready to go, does all it needs to do. And that is then defined in national planning policy about what sound means with those 4 criteria. So that planning inspector we mentioned on the earlier slide, that's one of their core roles, to see if the plan is sound and the plan can be moved on to be adopted by the councils. So the first test of soundness, is it positively prepared? And in summary, that means, does it respond to the needs of the area or the issues facing the area positively? Does it meet those needs? And in some cases, does it also even meet the needs of surrounding areas that couldn't meet their own needs? And these are really issues. So part of our process is we have to very much talk to our neighbours and understand what the issues facing surrounding areas as well are, not just our own areas, to demonstrate we've positively responded to the challenges and issues and opportunities facing our area. We also need to be able to justify what's in the plan. So is it an appropriate strategy that responds to those issues and opportunities that I've just mentioned? Have we considered the alternatives that are available to us and the choices that were available to us through plan making? And part of that is demonstrating that through a proportionate evidence base. So we've got a document library we've published as part of the consultation, which documents all the evidence base we've prepared up to this point to show what's behind our thinking at the moment. And it is extensive. We do live in a complex part of the world. We've got to deal with a range of very challenging issues. So you'll find a very extensive number of documents already in our evidence list, and that will keep growing as we go through the process. The next test we have to pass is the plan effective? Have we demonstrated that the policy proposals and sites we put in the plan will deliver to meet the needs we've identified? Is it effective in working with partners on the strategic issues we've identified through the area? Have we demonstrated that we worked properly with our the other major government bodies in the area, Environment Agency, for example? Have we worked effectively with them through the process? And we demonstrate that through something complicated called a statement of common ground, which is effectively just a statement to show we all agree or don't agree how we've worked together. And then a very important one at the end is it consistent with national policy? So the government publishes what's called a national planning policy framework, supported by other guidance, which sets out what they expect plans across the country to be achieving. They set out some high-level planning policies that would apply to all developments, and they set out what they expect local plans to do. And we need to demonstrate how we've responded to that policy guidance appropriately with our plan. And our inspector will almost be guided by those requirements in testing the plan as well. So one of the things we do when we get further down the line is to document how we've responded to national policy, almost line by line or paragraph per paragraph, at the very least, to show we have effectively responded to government policy. So we need to effectively pass all these tests and show the inspector at the end of the process that we've done this. And in responding to comments, something we'd recommend to people responding to do is have these in mind. So when we get to those more formal stages of the plan making process later down the line, inspectors will want to know from people making comments, well, which soundness test do you think the plan hasn't achieved, or which has it achieved if you're supporting the plan? So these do become important further down the line when we get into those more technical phases, but it doesn't mean they're not useful now to have in mind when you're making comments at this stage. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks very much, John. Yeah, really, really useful to consider those. And as usual, John, you've done an excellent job of explaining some incredibly complex stuff in good, simple terms. It's always the battle. So I'm going to hand over to Hannah now. Who's going to talk a little bit about why you want to get involved and why people would like to get involved. And bearing in mind this is recorded, you know, if there's people who haven't been able to make it today who you think might be interested in this, please do share the link to the webinar, which will put it up, and try and get people to get involved. Especially those people who might not necessarily think that it's relevant to them. So I'll pass over to Hannah.
Thanks, Paul. I was just going to start off actually by talking about some of the overarching principles that govern the way that we look at consultation. Some of you, if you're nerds like me, will be familiar with what's known as the gunning principles. And these were actually a series of principles that were established about consultation through actually a court case, where a case was brought to say that a public authority had not done what was felt to be by the complainant proper consultation. And it was actually really interesting because it was the first time that anyone had been asked what makes a consultation, what actually is consultation, what makes a legitimate consultation. And the QC who was presiding over the case, Stephen Sedley, essentially summed it up in these 4 principles, that these are what makes a consultation a reasonable consultation, a consultation that is meaningful. So firstly, that the consultation must take place when the proposals are still at a formative stage, so you can actually, they're not set in stone, whatever it is that you're consulting on, changes can be made. But secondly, we must put forward enough reasons for the people who are being consulted to actually respond with enough information. So you can't just be asked kind of questions to say, well, do you like this or that and the other, and have no background or no information for you to be able to understand those proposals. Thirdly, adequate time for consideration and response. So, you know, it's no point in consulting on something and then a week later coming out with the final plans. Clearly, you haven't given enough time for those consultation responses to be thought about. And fourthly, that the product of the consultation must be conscientiously taken into account. And I think for us, this is really important, that what you tell us gets poured over in a huge amount of detail, and we think about it very, very seriously. And that's really important. As important as what we hear from everybody is what we do with the information that you give us, how we consider that. Next slide, please. So some of the things that we really value from what we get from consultation and engagement. So firstly, really, it is that insight that you bring us. So we really need to know, and we need that information that only you have. That's a really valuable part of the insight that we bring to the plan. You know things about your local area that we aren't necessarily going to be able to know, or through the sort of more technical documentation, that granular nature of particular aspects of locality might not come through. But you also know things like what you do on a daily basis, where you go, how you travel, what would or wouldn't incentivize you to do things differently maybe in the future, how you make decisions about your life. And again, when you're commenting on the consultation, we really value that insight that you bring. So please tell us those things that we kind of can't find out any other way. We work with the Environment Agency, we work with highways, we work with a lot of technical agencies, but that's not the same as that insight into the citizens that make up our community. Next one. Again, then, building on that insight, you know, so that insight is in a way part of evidence, but there's other evidence that you may hold that can help us either prove or disprove the hypothesis that we come with, because what we're trying to do here is really test our thinking. We've used the evidence that we have that's available to us, the advice of various experts, to help come up with these proposals. But if you have some evidence that you think is material, that you think might actually change that, then please bring it to the table. So that might be some data. If you work with an organisation that collects data of some sort, that might be really helpful. That could be some reports or some other things that we might not be aware of. You know, we've talked about the role of local history and how some of that information is really valuable. There are limits to how much we have been able to, you know, we only have a team of certain people to be able to bring on that. And so if there's information that you know is buried in an archive somewhere that we might not have realized, please bring that to the table, and that's really helpful. The next one. Then testing it. So a plan is a tool. It's a tool for us as planners to try and get the best possible outcomes for our area. And like any toolbox, it's got a lot of different aspects to it. And we want to know whether they're really going to work. And that's working for all the different users of the plan, because the plan is used by regular citizens as something that you can consult, that you can see what those policies say, and they can help inform anything that you choose to do with your land, your buildings, anything from a house extension through to, as a farmer or as someone with a big land holding, what you choose to do. So you can tell us whether you think those policies are actually going to work, whether they're going to achieve the aims we hope them to achieve. And you can also just tell us whether you think you understand the plan. Is it clear enough? Is it something that people are going to be able to unambiguously use and interpret? That's really important to us. We want it to be as simple to understand as it can be. We know we can't avoid all of the technical jargon, but you know, fundamentally, if it's got ambiguities or it's got things that are not clear, it's not going to be as effective as it should be in terms of being that tool to create great places and to create a great environment for you going forward. Next one. So yeah, I mean, this is just a little bit of an example of kind of improvement. We're trying to do things like, for instance, use more digital mapping, use better maps, better graphics that are better, more explanatory, help people understand what we're doing. So please feedback. It is a tool, and we want to know how we can improve it, improve on what our last local plans have done to make this one a more streamlined and more effective part of the planning system. Next. So, and then the last is, you know, obviously this question of opinion. Do you like it? But I think it's really important to stress that consultation is not a referendum. And it's interesting to see some questions in the chat, or some comments in the chat here about who gets to decide and the role of the citizen. Planning is a process of making really difficult trade-offs between different priorities and different aspects of the world that we live in. And consultation isn't a referendum, thankfully, probably for many of us. I think we might have had enough of them for a bit. And it is about justifying and understanding why you have the views that you have about parts of the plan. So when you do comment, please let us know why you think what you think, not just what you think, but actually why, because that's that insight that helps us to understand how to make the plan better, how to make it fit with your priorities, what do we need to adjust, how do we need to adjust it in order to make it as robust and to balance those trade-offs as best as we possibly can. So it's really important to tell us, please, what you like as well as what you don't like. So you may like some policy ideas and not others. You may think some sites are appropriate and not others. It's just as important to tell us the bits that you think we should keep and hold on to, as well as the bits you think we should chuck out and start all over again on. So I think I'd really just like to sort of end by saying, you know, it really matters what you say, but it is definitely the reasons behind it, that insight that we're really seeking from you. I might just take the opportunity to answer a few of the questions I can see in the chat that deal with some of this question around consultation, because it is really interesting. And one of the questions that is about good consultation, allowing for the kind of none of the above. And I think that is a really good point to be raised. And we absolutely welcome comments that kind of are none of the above. So when we ask you to comment on it, there's in both the different forms of comments that you can leave, there is space for you to do that. We do welcome alternative proposals that you might come up with. Please do tell us about them. They are really important. We're not just, it's not a multiple choice answer. It's not saying, you know, you must choose this, that, or the other. There is also that space to say, no, you know what? I don't think that any of these things are right, but here are some other ideas about how to do it. Question about how views are taken into account, and I think we're going to come on to a little bit about what we do after the consultation, aren't we, Paul, in a few other slides, so I'll probably answer that afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the questions, I think, and unfortunately I can't see the questions because I'm one who's sharing my slides, but yeah, I mean, hopefully some of them will be answered in the second part of the session, and we will pick them up as we go forward. Thanks very much, Hannah, and yeah, and we totally all concur. It's really important to get involved. I mean, we have tried really hard to try and make it as understandable as possible, but I'm sure you know you'll all understand that the amount of work that goes into this and detail, we can't do any less. So I make no apologies for the amount of evidence that's been gathered. Really, it's really important that we do that too. So I know that you're super excited about this next part again. I'm going to come off my screen share again. I'm going to do another very short interactive session, which I hope that you'll like just as much as I think you liked the first one. Before we move on to to more formal questions, and it just is a little bit of picking up about how to think about feedback and how you might think about that in a way that's helpful for both both you and us, and how we can take that into consideration. So hopefully you can see my screen again. I'm really sorry that we've got two mentees. It's a different code this time, so you will have to enter a different code or scan that QR code again. I apologise about that. That's just our naivety on Menti at the moment, and we'll be working on getting that better for next time. So this time, first question is just thinking about comments and just kind of building on what Hannah was saying. Really, you know, what do you think makes a helpful comment? And you know, they're talking about the why you think about stuff, why is it important for you to make that comment? And I think this is something that, you know, we can kind of take other examples from in other parts of our lives. You know, we don't just comment and feedback on planning, and actually, you know, actually planning's has the least feedback on it apart from other things. Other things get a lot more energy, but maybe they don't, you know, we're not as good at presenting it in a way. So, you know, yes, context is absolutely one that is specific to, you know, it's specific to many things, but planning is important in that fact. Saying no to something is pointless without stating an alternative. Yeah, and that is true. And like I think that others have said, you know, this is not an easy thing to do. Everybody involved in making plans has to consider it's pretty much touches everything that people do, and it's looking into the future, which we know is inherently difficult at any time, but especially in 2021. Clear reasoning, constructive feedback's really important. You know, and planning's quite a divisive topic. You know, we know it is. You know, we all work in it. You know, we all understand it. But most of people working in planning, certainly in my experience, are people who, you know, genuinely care about making places better for people. And constructive feedback's helpful. We're not always going to agree, but you know, being able to communicate that and then feed it into the plan, or feedback why we haven't been able to feed it into the plan, is a really important part of that two-way process. Anyone else on there pick out any other bits, Hannah, or others that you think are interesting that are coming through? Backed up by evidence is great that's coming through.
Yeah, and I think that maybe scroll down, because I know someone put one in the chat which I put in for them, which I thought was really nice. Oh, I did typo it, I'm sorry. Fairness, honesty, courtesy, rationality, fact and relevance. I thought that was a really great answer, and I think, you know, that's the kind of nature of the debate that we really hope to have, is that ability to kind of disagree with each other in a way that is also has that courtey for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, backed up by evidence. And I think that, you know, a lot of the stuff that we see around in the media and in general at the moment, not planning wise, but in just in the times that we live in, is very much, you know, it's quite polarized in some respects. And what we've tried to do, you know, planning is a process that really works off the basis of the most current and up-to-date evidence or facts as much as possible. And it's, you know, it's fine to challenge those, but actually, you know, doing it in a kind of honest and courteous way is really important, based on logical arguments. I mean, it's great to see that evidence is coming through so strongly there, and you know, that's something obviously that the policy planners here on the call, and those also working in our team, obviously that's their life living in evidence-based work. You know, a lot of policy isn't written particularly evidence-based, but planning policy absolutely is, because it's examined at the end of the process and has to be so. So, you know, really helpful comments, and it'd be really fantastic to capture these actually as we feed them, you know, feed them back into the plan. These are really interesting. Okay, I'm going to move on to the second one now, everybody. Thank you for sharing. I think this has been really good to use Momentum. I'm quite enjoying this actually. It's really good. It's really good to see people engaging. So just a bit more of a broad question to you all, and this is kind of help us iterate. I know you'll know that we've been trying to bring forward a digital plan. This one is moving forward to that process, but you know, that includes kind of the way that people like to engage with stuff now. So we're really interested in how you like to leave feedback, and that doesn't mean in terms of how you leave feedback on this consultation, but you know, any kind of feedback. How do you consult with stuff? You know, I mean, we've all had pretty horrific experiences or pretty good experiences. Quick comments are good and simple. I mean, I've recently had a really bad experience with an application for something and leaving feedback, but also equally sometimes I think, wow, that was so super simple. They've really got that right. They've really designed that well. They've really got the user design right on that, and it's really helpful, and I can see how that's worked. And I think that's why we've tried to kind of mix it up with the way that we've consulted, and you know, I know that there's some conversation around the way of having two forms of consultation, and Hannah's going to talk about the kind of detailed comments and the quick survey that we're going to do in a little while. But actually, you know, we want to give a broad range of people, because not everyone's got the same preferences, but we want to try and reach as many people as possible and take those into consideration. So I think that we do need to have a broad swathe of ways to do that. Anything else in there? Anyone else picked up anything from the panel on there that they're thinking unstructured. Yeah, unstructured is interesting because you get so much. This is one of the things that, you know, we're constantly trying to work out how we get that breadth and richness of information that you get in unstructured comments, you know, and also then get the quantitative stuff as well, because there's a real mix there, and I think that that's a really important. Hannah, this is really up your street, but you know, what's your views on that?
Yeah, I think we actually really welcome unstructured comments as well as structured comments. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And I think this is really learning from how human beings work, that even if you ask people to be structured, sometimes they are unstructured anyway. So half the time, you know, in I think previous sort of more traditional formats, trying to sort of get people to be too structured can just lead to just almost as much work as just allowing people to be unstructured in the first place. Having said that, I think, you know, and this is something we will come on to, is that we want as many comments as possible. So having tools and ways that we can analyze them relatively easily is really important for us. And it's really interesting to see online coming through actually pretty centrally here, because it makes it a much easier process if we do have things online, for the simple fact that when they're not, we have to manually transcribe them into the database that we use to do that analysis. And it's, you know, we're trying to learn from a lot of new tools here, and we're trying to learn from a lot of other disciplines, other social research techniques, other analysis techniques which are quantitative, so involving numbers, but also kind of qualitative sentiment analysis and things like that. And it is a constantly evolving field, but we do try to find the right ways to allow people to do things, and make it as easy as possible. I think that's really interesting to see that coming through, like the fact that people want to do it simply, quickly, not expensive, concisely. Those all really resonate with us. The fewest clicks possible.
Fewest clicks as possible, yeah.
Yeah, that's a brilliant one. That's such a massive aim of us, is to literally have the fewest clicks possible, whilst we also have to keep with our GDPR and so forth.
And I think that's yeah, absolutely, and actually some of the stuff that goes on behind that, the use of kind of research work is really important in designing things with as few clicks as possible, and there's certainly some different skill sets coming into play here. So thank you very much again for all of your comments on that, and I'm going to hand over, just before we go to questions, we're just going to have a quick run through, I think, before we go to the panel, and some questions on just how you can get involved in this particular plan now. And Hannah, if I just share my screen, I'm going to hand back over to you, and then some of the others can get involved. Let's go. Let's see. Are we up? And we are.
Thank you. So so firstly, how can you explore the proposal? Well, you've already found us here today, so you've definitely managed that in some way or other. This is an online and offline method as well. So there are hard copies at local libraries, and also actually at the 2 council offices, although they are only still open by appointment only. And then we've worked quite hard to try and revamp our digital plan and our interactive mapping as well. And we really do welcome all feedback on this as well. So please do let us know what you think. But we're hoping to try and make that relatively intuitive. So for instance, if you click on something on the interactive map, it will bring up, actually, I wonder if I could almost do a little demo of this now. I'm sorry, I'm springing this on Paul, who might say, no, we didn't do this in our practice. But I just wonder whether I could just do a little demonstration to show people how that works, because I think it's great. Sorry to speak for the team, but Tim, actually, who's doing technical behind the scenes today, has worked really, really hard on this. Would that be okay, Paul, if I just shared my screen?
Of course, if it's helpful for people to say so.
Because I can just literally show you how that works as an experience. So if you go to the interactive map webpage, you'll get up this map. So this shows all the site proposals and also the strategic green space projects that we propose in the area. And if you click on a point on the map, so let's just say here, it will bring you up a little window like this, and if you click on the window on the arrow, it will bring you up a whole bunch of useful information about that site. And we've actually managed to link it up to digital plan. This is really exciting. I mean, it sounds like baby steps, but this is all kind of an improvement on what we've had before. So if you click on more information, that will take you straight through to the digital plan, where you can read the whole of the kind of policy direction for that particular site or initiative. So just simple things like that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Paul, so you can go back to your proper slides. But we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to explore that information, go backwards and forwards from the mapping to the written document and vice versa. And then we have a number of different ways that you can comment as well. So, if we go to the one before, maybe. Sorry, yeah, next one. I think I've got a lag on my thing. If you go to our local plan webpage, that map is embedded there. You can also use the view the map link to view that kind of full screen. Explore the plan takes you to the full digital plan document, and then we have two basic ways to comment. So we have a really quick survey, and then we have a more detailed comment facility for people who want to go into greater depth and so forth. So the reason we have those two means is because we have such a diverse range of people who want to comment. So everybody from just regular people, normal members of the public, young people, old people, residents, people who might work in the area, students, through to our more formal consultees. So they might be our parish councils, they might be our neighbouring local authorities, Historic England, the Environment Agency. There's a lot of bodies who also get kind of involved with commenting on a plan, who aren't just people, and all of their views are really important and valuable too. And of course, then there are landowners, developers, agents, professionals of different sorts who also want to put in their comments. So it's important that we do kind of cater for everyone as much as we can. Next, please. So the quick questionnaire, this is anonymous. We're at a relatively early stage in plan making, so we're still at regulation 18, and that means that we can do this. So this is really designed, it'll take 30 seconds on your mobile phone. It's a very, very quick questionnaire. And if you come to one of our in-person events, or if you go to a library, you'll find a hard copy version of that as well, which you can just fill in and leave there at the library. They're collecting them for us, or if you're at an event, just give it to one of us. And that really focuses on the larger issues and the major sites of the plan. Obviously, it's not possible in 12 or 13 questions to cover all 400 pages of the plan. So we've tried to focus on the bits where we think people will have the most to say and be most interested. Then the next way of commenting is the more detailed comment facility. So that's, I think, shown on the next page. So at the end of each page on the digital plan, you can see there's a little speech bubble, and if you click on that speech bubble, you'll bring up a box to start logging in and leaving your detailed comments. So that does require you to log in and register. And the reason for that is because this is really aimed at those, if you like, more detailed technical answers that people may have. So for instance, if you're a parish council and you're commenting on a site, it's actually quite important that we can track that response back to you as a parish council, because you come with a particular role in the process and a particular perspective, and if we want to follow up on your questions, we obviously need to know that it's you that's put them in and how to get hold of you and so forth. So we would encourage people to use whichever way they think is best, and we are asking people to respond online if at all possible, and because it does make our life a lot more consistent. If you send us sort of free-form answers by email, we have to transcribe them into the system to ensure that we analyse them alongside all of the other comments. We have to then try to assign them to the specific bits of the plan we think you're commenting on. So we need to kind of read them and say, well, we think this comment is relevant to climate change, but maybe this person actually means this comment in the context of some other bit of the plan. And it is quite complicated for us to do that analysis. And it helps us interpret your comments correctly if they are left against the right page or the right policy in the plan. It really does help a lot. Now, I'm really aware that we're getting to the end of time, so I'm going to just skip to a few of the questions that are in the chat, which relate to this question about how we comment and so forth. So someone has said, I'd like to leave thoughtful feedback by email at whatever length is needed to make the points, and to receive feedback on the content of the input also via email with a paper trail. That's a really great point, and I think we want to get that thoughtful feedback. Last consultation, however, we did get about 8,500 comments, so it isn't possible for us to comment back to each person individually about the answer that they give. However, we do publish our consultation statement, and the consultation statement does tell you how every comment has been taken into account. They're grouped, so when comments raise a similar issue, that it's an issues-based analysis. But if you read the consultation statement, which is open, it's published on our website as well, you can see how your